The Grand Hall of Vareth shimmered under the light of hundreds of floating crystals. It was the day of the victory celebration, an event that occurred once every decade when the Empire honored those who had contributed to its expansion across the galaxy. Aliens of every shape, size, and color filled the hall, their voices echoing in harmony and discord as they mingled and boasted about achievements. The atmosphere was proud and tense, each noble trying to outshine the others. Among the attendees, in a corner near the balcony, stood Mark, a human engineer recently appointed as an envoy to the Galactic Council. He had traveled across several star systems, witnessing marvels and dangers alike, yet here in this glittering palace he felt like a tiny spark among roaring fires. Humans were still considered newcomers by the Empire. Many species laughed at their simplicity, their lack of technology, and their small numbers. Mark's hands were folded calmly behind his back. He observed the gathering silently. He did not boast, he did not compete, and he did not care about the nobles' sneers. His mission was simple: observe, learn, and represent humanity with dignity. Even so, the alien nobles could not resist using him for entertainment. As the celebration reached its peak, a group of the Empire's higher nobles approached the center of the hall. Their leader, a tall figure with golden skin and glowing eyes, raised his hand. The hall quieted instantly. Every guest waited, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. The leader's voice rang clear and sharp. Tonight we bring a gift to the human who dares to stand among us. A gift we hope will teach him humility. A ripple of laughter ran through the hall. The other nobles whispered and chuckled. They believed humans could not understand the subtle arts of power, hierarchy, or tradition. To them, humans were weak, and mocking them was a sport. From behind the curtain, attendants carried a figure wrapped in fine silk and ceremonial garb. She stepped forward, and the light revealed her face. She was Lyra, a young alien woman with silver hair that shimmered like starlight and eyes that glowed faintly in soft green. She came from a rare royal line, a family that had once ruled parts of the Empire centuries ago. She moved gracefully as if born to command attention, yet her expression was not proud or angry. It was one of quiet uncertainty. The nobles presented her to Mark with exaggerated bows and mocking smiles. "We present to you, human," the leader said, "a gift worthy of your station. Take her as you wish, she is yours to command." The hall erupted in laughter. The aliens around Mark cheered and clapped, their amusement loud and mocking. Some waved banners showing humans being trampled by alien soldiers. The nobles thought this was the perfect joke. They expected Mark to look shocked, confused, or even terrified. Mark did none of those things. He stepped forward slowly, keeping his eyes on Lyra. He looked at her calmly and spoke in a clear voice. "You are free. No one owns another person. No one will ever force you to obey me or anyone else." The laughter stopped. First one, then another, then the entire hall fell silent. Many could not believe what they had heard. No human had ever spoken so boldly in the Empire's court. The nobles looked at one another with confusion and irritation. Their plan had failed in the most unexpected way. Lyra blinked. Her world had always been defined by strict rules, obedience, and expectation. From childhood, she had been taught that her life belonged to the Empire, that her family's honor required submission. Yet this human, so ordinary and simple, had spoken to her as though she were her own person. His words carried no arrogance, no threat, only respect. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a spark of hope. Perhaps she could have a choice, a voice, and freedom. A noble, his face twisted with disbelief, stepped forward. "You dare speak to her like that, human? She is royal blood. She will obey." Mark shook his head slowly. "She will not obey because you say so. You cannot make another being live as you wish. Respect is earned, not demanded." The nobles were stunned. Some whispered nervously, afraid that the young human had broken a rule they could not control. Others scowled, feeling their authority challenged. Lyra watched the exchange in silence. She could not speak yet. The experience of being treated as property had left her cautious. Finally, a noble with deep purple skin muttered, "We will see how long this human courage lasts. A human has no power here. Soon he will learn his place." Mark did not respond. He simply turned toward Lyra and offered a hand. "If you wish, you may come with me. You will not be forced to serve anyone. This is your choice." Lyra hesitated. No one had ever asked her what she wanted before. Even her parents and teachers had made decisions for her, insisting it was for her own good. She had been raised as a symbol, a gift to be given or sold. Now this human offered her freedom, safety, and respect. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. "I will come," she said softly. The nobles gasped. Some whispered angrily. Others laughed nervously, unsure whether this was part of the act or a serious insult. Mark ignored them. He focused only on Lyra as they walked out of the grand hall together. Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly above the city. Stars shone like tiny lanterns in the blackness, and the wind carried the scent of alien flowers. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the cool air on her skin. It was different from anything she had known. It was open, free, and beautiful. Mark looked at her and said, "You are not a gift or a joke. You are yourself, and that is enough." She smiled faintly, a smile she had never given to anyone before. For the first time she felt seen. She felt respected. She felt alive. Over the next few hours, Mark and Lyra traveled quietly through the city. He introduced her to the small colony where he worked. The humans there were curious but kind. They did not mock Lyra or treat her as special because of her bloodline. They welcomed her as a friend and visitor, offering food, shelter, and conversation. Lyra watched how humans interacted. They argued at times, laughed loudly, and celebrated small victories. They worked together and helped one another. They respected differences instead of using them to dominate. It was strange and fascinating to her. Her life had been filled with hierarchy, fear, and rules. Here she saw something entirely new: equality. That night, as she lay in a simple room provided by Mark, she thought about the nobles at the celebration. They had laughed at her and at him. They had assumed humans were weak and easy to control. But this human, Mark, had shown courage without anger, wisdom without arrogance, and respect without fear. Lyra closed her eyes. She did not feel like a gift or a prize anymore. She felt like a person. And for the first time, she wondered what it would mean to choose her own path. Mark knocked gently on the door before entering. He carried a small tray with simple food. "I thought you might be hungry," he said. "There is no feast here, but it is enough to start." She took the food with a nod. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was soft but firm. "For everything. For giving me a choice." "You do not need to thank me," he replied. "You chose yourself. I only helped you see it." They ate quietly, the sound of their simple meal filling the room. Outside, the colony hummed with life. Ships landed and took off, and the faint hum of machinery reminded Lyra that this world was different from her own. Different but alive. Different but welcoming. After the meal, Mark spoke again. "You do not have to decide everything tonight. Freedom is not a single step. It is a journey. You may explore, ask questions, and learn, and I will help as much as I can." Lyra nodded again. "A journey. I like the sound of that," she said. That night, as she drifted into sleep, she realized that the Empire's joke had not humiliated her. It had, strangely, led her to a choice she never expected. She would not return to the life they had planned for her. She would not be a pawn in their games. Instead, she would explore this new world, guided by someone who had shown her what respect and kindness truly meant. Mark sat outside her door for a while longer, watching the stars. He thought about the risks he had taken standing up in the grand hall. The nobles could not forgive him for what he had done. They might come for her. They might come for him. But he had done what was right, and he would not regret it. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders. But in that small colony, two lives had begun to change. A human and a young alien royal, once a joke to the Empire, now walking together on a path of freedom, respect, and discovery. And somewhere in the distance, the stars shone brighter, as if the universe itself was watching the first step of something extraordinary. The small colony where Mark and Lyra settled was nothing like the grand halls of Vareth. It was a world of practical buildings, humming machines, and open spaces filled with humans and a few alien settlers who had come seeking safety or work. The air was cool and smelled faintly of metal and soil, and the skies were painted with a soft orange and purple glow during sunset. Lyra had never seen a place like this. On her homeworld, cities were grand and structured with precise lines of authority. Everyone had a rank, a role, and an expectation. Here people moved freely, laughed openly, and helped one another without a ruler dictating every action. Lyra watched children chase each other through the streets, elders trading advice in markets, and workers collaborating on strange machines that glowed and hummed. Mark noticed her curiosity. "Do you want to see the workshop?" he asked one morning. "It is where I fix and build starships." "You might find it interesting," she nodded. "Yes, I want to understand how you live." The workshop was a large hangar filled with tools, machines, and several small starships in various stages of repair. The walls were lined with workbenches, storage units, and shelves of glowing metal parts. Humans moved efficiently, speaking softly to one another, guiding apprentices and adjusting machines. Lyra could see the difference immediately. Humans worked together without hierarchy forcing them, without fear of punishment, without expectation of reward beyond the satisfaction of creation and problem-solving. Mark introduced her to the workers. "This is Lyra," he said. "She will help me and learn from us. She is not a guest and she is not an employee. She is a partner in discovery." The humans looked at her cautiously at first. They had heard stories about alien royals, most of them proud and distant. Yet Lyra smiled politely and bowed slightly, not as a sign of obedience but as a greeting. That small gesture, paired with her openness to learn, changed their perception. Soon she was being shown how to hold tools, check readings on machines, and repair smaller parts under careful guidance. Lyra was fascinated. The humans' methods were so different from her own people's teachings. On Vareth, she had been taught to memorize procedures, follow exact orders, and never question authority. Here she saw that humans valued creativity, questions, and learning through trial and error. When a machine failed, they studied it, discussed ideas, and tried again. There was no shame in failure, only the chance to improve. Mark watched her as she worked. He could see her eyes lighting up with curiosity and wonder. "You understand faster than I expected," he said. "Most humans take weeks to learn what you can do in a day." She smiled, a little embarrassed. "On my world, I was taught rules and tradition. It is strange to learn by doing and thinking for myself, but I like it." Days passed and Lyra's confidence grew. She began assisting Mark in larger tasks, suggesting ideas for repairs or improvements. One afternoon, as they worked on a small shuttle, she paused and asked, "Why do humans treat each other this way? Without fear, without rules about rank?" Mark leaned back on a workbench and looked at her thoughtfully. "Humans learned that strength alone is not the answer. Cooperation and respect matter more. Power without care destroys people. We protect each other, not because we must, but because it is the right thing to do." Lyra considered his words. They sounded simple, but they carried weight. On her homeworld, she had never seen respect without obligation or fear. Humans treated others as equals even when they were weaker or younger. Even Mark, a human of no great rank in the Empire, stood up for her against the nobles. The more time she spent in the colony, the more she noticed these small acts of human kindness. A young girl tripped on a stair and a stranger rushed to help. Workers offered food to those in need. Even the elders shared stories and knowledge freely. Lyra began to feel that humans were not just strong in body or technology, but strong in spirit. One evening, after a long day of work, Mark and Lyra walked outside the workshop. The sky was painted with streaks of pink and violet. Ships moved slowly across the horizon, and the hum of distant machinery filled the air. Lyra sighed. "I never imagined a place like this could exist." "It feels alive, welcoming, free," Mark smiled. "It is not perfect. There are challenges, mistakes, and dangers. But people here try to help each other. That is what matters." Lyra paused and looked at him. "You help everyone, even me. You risk your safety for people you barely know." "Why?" Mark shrugged. "Because it is the right thing. Because someone must." Humans believe that actions define a person more than rank or title. It may be strange to the Empire, but it works. Lyra felt a warmth she had never experienced before. In her world, rank defined value, obedience defined worth, and appearances defined power. Here, a human's actions defined everything. Weeks later, a visitor arrived at the colony, the governor of the region. He had come to inspect the settlement and see how things were managed. When he learned about Lyra, his expression darkened. "You know who she is, human?" the governor said quietly to Mark. "She is of the royal Vareth bloodline. If the Empire discovers her presence here, you will face consequences. She could be taken and you could lose everything." Mark nodded calmly. "I understand. I will protect her." The governor shook his head. "You do not understand the danger. The Empire does not forgive those who take what belongs to them. They will come. You must be careful." Lyra, listening nearby, felt her chest tighten. Danger was familiar, but she had never experienced it alongside someone who would not abandon her. She had often been protected by servants, soldiers, or advisors who obeyed orders not by choice. Mark's protection was different. It was deliberate, personal, and brave. That night, as she prepared for sleep, Lyra thought about the colony, the humans, and Mark. She remembered the grand hall of Vareth, the mocking nobles and their cruel joke. They had tried to humiliate both her and the human, expecting him to fail. But instead he had spoken words that silenced an entire court and offered her freedom. Freedom was a strange and beautiful feeling. She realized that she was no longer a pawn, a gift, or a symbol. She was a person with choices, a person who could learn, grow, and even dream. Mark knocked gently on her door before entering. "Are you ready to continue tomorrow?" he asked, holding a small notebook filled with sketches of ship parts. Lyra smiled. "Yes, I want to learn more. I want to understand your world and your ways. It is different. But I like different." "You will learn quickly," Mark said, setting the notebook on the table, "and I will guide you. But remember, mistakes are okay. Humans learn by trying and failing. There is no shame in it." She nodded thoughtfully. "On my world, mistakes were punished. Here, mistakes are lessons. I must remember that." Days turned into weeks. Lyra became skilled in repairs, adjustments, and even small designs. The workshop team began to respect her knowledge, her ideas, and her dedication. She helped Mark improve several ships, suggesting modifications that combined human innovation with alien precision. The humans were impressed. Lyra's intelligence, her calm demeanor, and her willingness to learn made her a valuable partner. Yet more importantly, she began to understand something Mark had always known. Respect, cooperation, and courage were more powerful than titles or bloodlines. One afternoon, as they were testing a newly repaired shuttle, Lyra looked at Mark and said, "You are different from anyone I have known. You treat people with kindness not because it is expected but because you choose to. You stand for what is right even when it is dangerous. How can someone be like you?" Mark laughed softly. "It is not easy. Sometimes humans fail. Sometimes we make mistakes. But the choice to care, to protect, and to act with honesty, that is something anyone can learn." Lyra thought about the nobles, their cruelty, and the Empire's rigid rules. She realized that the human way was not just a method of living. It was a form of strength. Strength that came from the heart, from courage, and from the ability to see others as equals. By the end of the month, the colony had accepted Lyra as one of their own. Children ran to greet her, workers sought her advice, and even the elders nodded with approval. She had found a place where she could be herself, where her knowledge mattered and where her choices were respected. Mark watched her from a distance one evening, a quiet pride in his eyes. Lyra had changed in ways he had not expected. She was learning, growing, and becoming someone extraordinary. Not because of her bloodline, but because of her character, curiosity, and courage. For the first time, Lyra felt hope for the future. She knew the Empire might still come for her. She knew there were dangers ahead. But for the first time, she was not afraid alone. She had a companion, a guide, and a protector. She had someone who believed in her, and that belief was stronger than any throne, title, or noble decree. Together, Mark and Lyra continued to work, learn, and explore. Each day brought new lessons, new discoveries, and a growing bond between a human and an alien royal. The joke the Empire had made had failed completely. They had underestimated the power of choice, respect, and courage. In this small colony, far from the grand halls of the Empire, a human and a young alien royal were quietly changing the course of their lives, and perhaps unknowingly the future of the galaxy. Life in the colony had settled into a quiet rhythm. Mark and Lyra had grown more confident in their new home. Lyra had learned to operate machines, repair ships, and even help design new tools alongside the humans. She enjoyed the freedom and simplicity of the colony, the laughter of children, and the warmth of people who treated her as an equal. Mark, too, felt a sense of satisfaction. He had never imagined that a human could make such an impact on a royal alien's life, and yet here he was, watching Lyra thrive. Their bond had grown stronger. They trusted each other, relied on each other, and quietly celebrated small victories together. But peace was fragile in the galaxy. News traveled fast. Across the stars, whispers reached the Empire about a human who had refused to obey, who had taken an alien royal as a companion, and who had resisted noble authority. The Empire was not accustomed to failure or defiance. To the leaders, this human had become a symbol of insolence, a challenge to their pride. Weeks passed, and one morning, a fleet appeared in the sky above the colony. The ships were enormous, their hulls black and silver, bristling with weapons and shields. They blocked the sunlight and cast long shadows over the settlement. Colonists ran to the outskirts to watch, fear and curiosity etched on their faces. Mark immediately recognized the fleet as belonging to the Empire. He had expected this day might come, but the sight of so many ships made his heart race. "They've come for her," he said softly to Lyra. "We must be ready." Lyra's face was calm. She had trained under Mark's guidance and had learned the human way of facing danger. "We will not run," she said. "We have rights here. We have friends. We will stand together." Mark nodded. "Good, let's prepare." The colonists, under Mark's direction, began fortifying the settlement. Drones were deployed for defense, energy shields were activated around key buildings, and warning systems were tested. Humans and alien allies moved with purpose and determination, trusting Mark's leadership and Lyra's insight. When the Empire's fleet landed, massive warships descending slowly and threateningly, the nobles expected submission. They assumed that a human without military training could not possibly resist their forces. They were wrong. Mark stood at the colony's entrance, flanked by a small group of trained colonists and Lyra at his side. She wore simple clothing, but her presence carried authority. Her knowledge of alien systems proved invaluable, helping the defenders anticipate the fleet's strategies. The Empire's commander, a tall figure with golden markings and a ceremonial staff, approached. "You are foolish, human," he said, his voice echoing with power. "Return the royal or face destruction. You cannot resist us." Mark's expression was calm but firm. "Lyra is not your property. She will not go with you. This colony follows the law of humanity. You will not take her from us." A tense silence followed. The commander's eyes narrowed. "So you choose to fight?" Mark nodded. "Yes, if you attack, we will defend ourselves. We will not allow harm to come to anyone here." The battle began with precision and intensity. Energy shields flared against blasts from the Empire's weapons. Drones maneuvered skillfully, guided by human operators and Lyra's strategic input. Mark directed repairs and defenses, moving quickly and efficiently among the colonists. Despite being outnumbered, the defenders used their knowledge of the terrain, traps and clever tactics to outmaneuver the invaders. They struck with small calculated attacks that disabled ships, blocked pathways, and slowed enemy movements. Lyra coordinated with Mark, using her understanding of the Empire's technology to predict the fleet's actions. For hours the battle raged. The nobles expected an easy victory, but human ingenuity and cooperation proved stronger than arrogance. They could not anticipate the clever traps, the teamwork, and the courage of people who fought not for power or titles, but for freedom and life. Colonists cheered each small victory, their morale rising with every successful defense. Lyra, once considered a joke, now stood as a leader and strategist, guiding humans and allies alike. She realized that the human way of thinking, cooperation, respect, and courage, was not weakness, but strength. By evening, the Empire's fleet had been forced to retreat. Several ships were damaged and the commanders were furious. They had underestimated the humans, and their pride would not allow them to accept defeat. Yet they had no choice but to withdraw, leaving the colony intact. As the smoke cleared and the dust settled, Lyra and Mark walked among the colonists, ensuring that everyone was safe. They counted damages, checked on injuries, and reassured people. The colony had survived stronger than before. Lyra looked at Mark, her eyes reflecting admiration and gratitude. "You stood against the Empire for me, for all of us. I have never seen anyone so brave." Mark shook his head. "It was not just me. Everyone here fought together. Humans, aliens, friends. Courage is not just one person. It is shared." She nodded, understanding the truth in his words. On her world, courage was measured by titles, armies, and fear. Here, courage was measured by willingness to act for what is right, regardless of the odds. That night, as the colony celebrated quietly, Lyra reflected on everything that had happened. The Empire had sent a fleet to retrieve her, expecting obedience. They had expected her to return to their control. Instead, she had found freedom, friendship, and respect. She had found a human who stood for principle rather than power. Mark approached her with a small cup of tea. "You're thinking too much," he said with a gentle smile. "Rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight we celebrate what we have achieved." Lyra accepted the cup and smiled back. "I cannot stop thinking. Everything has changed. The Empire sees me as property. I have learned freedom. I have seen courage. I wonder, can we keep this peace?" Mark's eyes were calm, steady, and confident. "We will face whatever comes together. Humans and those who choose freedom can change the rules of the galaxy. We have proven it today." For the first time, Lyra felt hope. Hope not just for herself, but for a future where humans and aliens could work together, learn from each other, and protect each other. She realized that the joke the Empire had played had failed completely. They had underestimated the power of choice, respect, and courage. The next day, scouts reported that the Empire was regrouping. More ships were on their way, likely larger and stronger than before. The colony prepared for the possibility of another attack, but this time they were ready. They had learned from the first battle, and they had Lyra's insight, Mark's leadership, and the trust and cooperation of the colonists. Lyra spent time with the children of the colony, teaching them simple lessons about science, machines, and problem-solving. She saw the joy in their eyes as they discovered new things just as she had. In that moment, she understood why humans valued learning, curiosity, and freedom. It was not just for survival. It was for life itself. Mark watched her and felt pride. She had grown beyond the expectations of the Empire. She had become a leader, a partner, and a symbol of the power humans possessed, not through weapons or armies, but through courage, intelligence, and respect. That evening, as they looked at the stars from the colony's central platform, Lyra spoke softly. "Do you think they will come back?" "They will," Mark replied. "But we will be ready, and we will not stand alone. The people here will fight, not because they must, but because they choose to protect what is right." Lyra nodded. "I never imagined this life. On my world, I had no choice. I had no freedom. Here I have both, and I have you." Mark placed a hand over hers. "And I have you. We face the galaxy together." In that moment, beneath the glow of distant stars and the quiet hum of the colony, Lyra realized something profound. She was no longer a gift, a pawn, or a joke. She was a partner in building a new future, one where humans and aliens could live with respect, courage, and freedom. The Empire might still seek to reclaim her. Nobles might still plot and scheme. But Lyra now understood a truth that no amount of power or authority could change. Courage, intelligence, and the human way of respect were stronger than any army or decree. And the galaxy, vast and uncertain, had already begun to change because of it. The colony had survived the first attack, but the threat of the Empire still lingered over the settlement like a shadow. Mark and Lyra knew that their actions had consequences. Word of their victory had spread far beyond their small world. Humans had driven off part of the Empire's fleet, and this news traveled quickly through trading routes and distant colonies. Some celebrated it as a sign of hope, while others feared reprisal from the nobles. The morning after the battle, Lyra walked through the central plaza of the colony. People greeted her warmly, showing respect not for her royal bloodline but for her courage and leadership. Children ran to her side, curious about the stories of the defense. Colonists shared news of ships arriving to offer aid, inspired by the reports of the human and the alien royal who had stood against a fleet. Mark joined her as they observed the activity. "We are not just protecting ourselves anymore," he said. "Others are beginning to see humans differently. Some may join us voluntarily. We must consider alliances." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "On my world, alliances were made for power, titles, or fear. Here people join because they believe in something greater. That is different. That is stronger." They spent the day meeting with representatives from nearby colonies. Merchants, engineers, and explorers arrived, offering ships, supplies, and expertise. Lyra helped explain the technology and strategy of the Empire to the newcomers. Her knowledge of alien systems combined with Mark's human ingenuity allowed them to create defenses that no one had expected. Together they planned for the possibility of a larger attack. As the sun set, Mark and Lyra stood on a high balcony overlooking the colony. The ships and people below moved in harmony, a mixture of preparation and calm determination. Lyra could feel the difference in energy. This was not fear. This was purpose. They trust you, Mark said quietly. Not because of your bloodline, but because you have proven yourself. You are a leader, Lyra, not a pawn. She smiled softly. And you have taught me to see what is truly important. On my world, strength was shown through fear. Here, strength is shown through courage, respect, and action. You have changed me, Mark. Before they could speak further, a communication beam lit up in the sky. A holographic image of the Emperor of Vareth appeared, projected in golden light. He spoke with a voice that carried authority and power. Mark of Earth, Lyra of Vareth, you have defied the Empire. You have taken a royal bloodline and refused obedience. Do you understand the consequences of your actions? Mark stepped forward. Your empire underestimates humans. We do not submit to fear. Lyra is not property. We will not return her to you against her will. The Emperor's expression hardened. You may have driven away a fleet, but the Empire will not forgive this defiance. Consider this your final warning. Return the royal voluntarily or face the full strength of the Empire. Lyra met the Emperor's gaze without fear. I will not go back because I choose not to. I am free, and I will stand with those who respect life and freedom. The Emperor's hologram flickered and vanished. Silence hung over the colony for a moment. Then a messenger arrived from a distant trading world. We have heard of your actions. If you need aid, ships and crews are ready to support you. Humans and aliens alike see your courage. Lyra turned to Mark. People are joining us. They believe in what we are doing. Mark nodded. The Empire expects us to fight alone. They do not understand that humans inspire cooperation. Strength comes not from fear, but from unity. Over the next days, the colony transformed. Ships from nearby systems arrived, some piloted by humans, others by aliens seeking freedom and cooperation. Workshops expanded, and training programs began to teach defenders the best methods for strategy, repairs, and communication. Lyra worked tirelessly, sharing knowledge of alien technology and helping integrate it with human systems. Meanwhile, the Empire struggled with internal conflict. Some nobles were furious at the loss of face. Others whispered that perhaps humans were not as weak as they had believed. Messages arrived from other planets showing support for the humans and their allies. Traders offered goods, colonies pledged protection, and explorers volunteered to deliver supplies. The balance of power was beginning to shift. One evening, as the colony gathered around a large platform to celebrate these new alliances, Lyra stood beside Mark. She looked out at the people, humans, aliens, and mixed teams working together. I never imagined this, she said softly. I thought I would always be a pawn. But now we are building something greater than anyone expected. Mark smiled. That is the human way. We see potential in people, in actions, and in courage. We fight for respect, for freedom, and for unity. We do not give up when the odds are against us. The following weeks brought further changes. Lyra discovered she was carrying life, a sign that her connection with Mark had become more than friendship or partnership. The news spread quietly at first, then widely among the colony and allied worlds. Whispers of amazement filled the air. The child she carried would be the first of its kind, a bridge between humans and Vareth royalty. The Empire learned of this development with disbelief. To them, it was impossible that a human could influence a royal line, that an alien of noble blood would freely choose to stay with a human, and that their defiance could inspire cooperation across multiple planets. Their pride refused to accept the reality. In a council meeting on the Empire's capital, nobles argued over how to respond. Some demanded immediate military action. Others cautioned patience, fearing the humans had grown too strong, their alliances too widespread. The Emperor listened carefully. Then, in a calm and deliberate voice, he spoke. This is no longer a simple matter of obedience. They have proven themselves. Let us approach carefully. If humans and allies can be guided rather than destroyed, perhaps the future of the Empire can benefit from their strength. Back at the colony, Mark and Lyra continued their work. They trained new recruits, built defenses, and strengthened the bonds between humans and alien allies. Lyra's knowledge of alien systems allowed them to anticipate possible strategies the Empire might use. Mark taught the value of quick thinking, ingenuity, and respect. Together, they became a team that others looked to for guidance and inspiration. One evening, as they walked through a quiet grove outside the colony, Lyra spoke about her thoughts and fears. I did not expect this life, she said. I did not expect to find freedom, friends, or hope. And now I carry life that will change the galaxy even more. Mark placed a hand over hers. You are not alone. We face this together. We will protect the colony, our allies, and the life you carry, and together we will show the Empire that respect, courage, and cooperation are stronger than fear. She looked at him with gratitude and love. You have taught me what strength truly is. On my world, power was in commands, armies, and titles. Here it is in action, courage, and choices. I understand now. Their lives became a balance of preparation and teaching. Lyra worked with engineers to improve starship designs, while Mark coordinated defenses and trained recruits. The colony became a hub of innovation and unity. Every new arrival brought ideas, skills, and encouragement, further strengthening their position. Word of the colony's success spread across systems. Colonists from distant planets joined voluntarily, inspired by stories of humans and a royal alien standing together. The network of allies grew, forming a quiet but strong resistance to the arrogance of the Empire. Lyra realized that this was more than survival. This was a movement. Humans and aliens working together could change expectations, shift alliances, and redefine strength in the galaxy. The Empire's old ways of hierarchy, fear, and domination were no longer absolute. Mark noticed her reflection and said quietly, You see it, don't you? The future is not set. Humans, aliens, and those who choose freedom can shape it. We only need courage, wisdom, and unity. Lyra nodded. Yes, and the child I carry, it will represent that unity. A new life bridging worlds, showing that choice, courage, and respect are stronger than any title or fleet. As night fell, the colony glowed with light from countless ships, workshops, and homes. The stars above shone brightly, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the possibilities it held. Lyra and Mark stood together, feeling the weight of responsibility and the hope of change. The Empire would come again, surely. But the colony was no longer a single human and an alien royal. It was a network, a community, a symbol, and at the heart of it were two beings who had refused to accept fear, who had chosen courage, and who had built alliances stronger than the mightiest fleet. For the first time, Lyra understood the full power of humans. Not in weapons or numbers, but in heart, respect, and action. And with that understanding, she knew that the galaxy itself might change because of one human, one alien, and the courage to stand together. The colony had grown stronger than ever. Ships from neighboring systems hovered in the sky, their crews ready to assist. Workshops and training grounds were filled with humans and aliens learning from each other. Lyra's presence had inspired many, and Mark's leadership kept the settlement organized and disciplined. Together they had built a community of courage, respect, and innovation. Despite this progress, the shadow of the Empire lingered. The leaders of Vareth had observed from afar, puzzled and irritated by their inability to control what they considered a small human settlement. Reports of the colony's unity and growing influence challenged centuries of Empire thinking. Humans, once dismissed as weak, were now symbols of resilience and strength. Lyra, a royal bloodline who had once been a pawn, had become a beacon of hope for freedom and cooperation. Lyra spent most of her days in the workshops and training halls, teaching advanced strategies, sharing knowledge of the Empire's technology, and assisting Mark in designing defenses and new ships. She also spent quiet moments observing the children of the colony. They played together freely, humans and aliens side by side, learning lessons that went beyond books and machines. Lessons of respect, courage, and cooperation. One morning, as the sun rose over the settlement, a message arrived from the Empire. The holographic projection displayed a council of high-ranking nobles and officials. Their expressions were stern, but there was something different in their eyes. Respect, perhaps even caution. Mark of Earth, Lyra of Vareth. The Emperor's voice rang through the projection. Your colony has survived the Empire's inspection and continued to prosper. Reports indicate that humans and aliens are cooperating effectively. You have inspired many and disrupted expectations. We recognize the strength and wisdom demonstrated here. Mark and Lyra exchanged glances. The tone was formal, but it lacked the arrogance of past communications. The Emperor continued, We will not interfere with your settlement or your leadership. You are permitted to continue your work and influence freely. However, know that the Empire watches and our respect comes with caution. You are no longer considered a simple human defying a noble. You are an example. Lyra felt a surge of pride. For the first time, The Empire acknowledged her agency and strength. For the first time, humans were recognized for their courage and wisdom. She looked at Mark and whispered, "They respect us. They finally understand that strength comes from more than power and fear." Mark smiled. It took time, but humans show value in ways others cannot always measure. We act with courage, respect, and intelligence. That is our power. The months passed and the colony continued to thrive. Lyra's pregnancy progressed, and the community prepared to welcome a child who would symbolize the unity of humans and the Empire's noble bloodline. Colonists worked together to build a safe environment, designing specialized medical facilities and training caregivers for the newborn. Lyra spent quiet hours teaching children about science, engineering, and strategy. She emphasized the importance of choice, courage, and respect. She often spoke of her journey from being a pawn in the Empire to becoming a leader who could inspire and guide. Mark observed her closely, feeling immense pride and admiration. She had grown into a true partner, not only in life but in shaping the future of their world and beyond. One evening, as the colony rested under a sky filled with stars, Lyra felt the first signs that the child's arrival was near. Mark immediately assisted, ensuring that everything was ready for a safe birth. The community rallied together, offering support and care. Despite the anxiety, there was excitement and hope. This child represented the union of courage, freedom, and wisdom, a new beginning for the galaxy. Hours later, surrounded by the calm energy of the colony and the skillful guidance of Mark and trusted caretakers, Lyra gave birth to a healthy child. The infant had bright eyes, a mix of human determination and noble heritage. The community celebrated quietly, filled with joy, awe, and the realization that they were witnessing the start of a new era. Mark held the child carefully. "Welcome," he whispered. "You are not a gift, not a pawn. You are your own person. You will grow with courage, respect, and wisdom, just as we do." Lyra placed her hand over his, feeling the connection between them and the future they had created together. "Our child," she said softly, "will grow knowing freedom, choice, and love. They will understand that strength comes from heart and mind, not titles or fear." The news of the child's birth spread throughout the colonies and even reached distant worlds. Allies and settlers sent gifts, messages of congratulations, and pledges of continued cooperation. Lyra and Mark's example inspired countless others to consider new ways of thinking about humans, aliens, and the Empire's role in the galaxy. The Emperor of Vareth sent a formal message, acknowledging the child's birth and the leadership displayed by Lyra and Mark. He spoke with respect. "This child represents unity, courage, and hope. The Empire recognizes your achievements and the strength of your actions. May this life guide others toward cooperation and understanding across the galaxy." Lyra reflected on how far they had come. Once considered a joke to the Empire, she had become a mother, a leader, and a symbol of hope. Mark had helped her discover courage, respect, and freedom. Together, they had built a community that challenged old assumptions and inspired change. As the months passed, the colony flourished even more. Lyra and Mark continued their work, balancing leadership, family, and teaching. The child grew surrounded by a diverse community, learning lessons of cooperation, courage, and innovation from both humans and aliens. The next generation would inherit a world where freedom, respect, and strength were not measured by power or fear, but by action and heart. Mark often spoke to Lyra quietly during long evenings. "We have changed much already, but the galaxy will continue to watch. We must lead with patience, courage, and care. Our example is powerful, but it must be maintained." Lyra nodded, holding their child close. "We will. I have learned the human way, to act with courage, to respect others, and to teach by example. That is what matters. That is how we shape the future." Word of the colony's success and its growing influence eventually reached distant parts of the Empire. Humans were no longer seen as weak or insignificant. The example set by Mark and Lyra encouraged other leaders to reconsider their strategies, forming alliances and sharing knowledge in ways the Empire had never expected. The seeds of change spread quietly, steadily, and effectively. Lyra looked at the horizon one morning, the sky painted with soft pink and orange. She felt hope stronger than she ever had. The Empire had tried to control her, but freedom had won. Human courage and respect had changed not only her life, but the lives of countless others. And with her child, the future was secure. Mark stood beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You see it, don't you? The galaxy can change. Humans, aliens, and those who choose freedom can shape it. We have started something that cannot be undone. Lyra smiled, her heart full of hope. Yes, and this is only the beginning. The child we have brought into the world will carry the values we believe in: courage, respect, and choice. That is the true strength of humanity. Together, Mark, Lyra, and their child stood on the balcony overlooking the colony. Ships moved through the sky. Workers prepared for the day, and children played freely in the fields. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities, challenges, and promise. For the first time, Lyra realized that the Empire's joke had failed completely. They had underestimated the power of humans, not in fleets or weapons, but in courage, intelligence, and heart. She had discovered the strength within herself, the value of partnership, and the hope of a new era. Mark looked at the child sleeping peacefully in Lyra's arms. The future is theirs, he whispered. They will grow knowing freedom, respect, and courage, and that will change the galaxy. Lyra nodded. Yes, and we will guide them, protect them, and show them the way. Humanity's way. The way of heart, action, and choice. As the sun rose over the colony, casting golden light across the settlement, Lyra and Mark understood something profound. They had not only survived the Empire's challenge, they had changed the course of history. The galaxy would never be the same. The child cooed softly, a tiny voice of hope and promise. In that moment, surrounded by allies, friends, and the community they had built, Mark and Lyra knew that the future was secure. The child represented a new beginning, a bridge between worlds, and the enduring strength of humans and their values. Together, the family stood as a symbol of courage, respect, and unity. The Empire could watch and learn. The galaxy could adapt, and humanity, guided by heart and action, had proven itself not just to survive, but to inspire and lead. The future was no longer uncertain. It was bright, full of promise, and guided by the strength of choice, the courage to act, and the unity of humans and allies who believed in a better galaxy. And in that light, the child of a human and a royal alien became the heir not only to a new generation, but to a new era. An era where humanity's way of courage, respect, and freedom shaped the galaxy forever.